Greg Glassman, founder of CrossFit, defined fitness as increased work capacity across broad time and modal domains. Basically what that means is the athlete who can produce the most mechanical power in an efficient way over a certain time period will win any particular workout. The problem here is that we actually have no real idea on how much power an athlete is producing while doing specific functional movements such as burpees, thrusters and deadlifts, until now. In this video, I will share some incredibly interesting data which we obtained from elite CrossFit athletes while they were doing CrossFit Open Workout 25.1. We used the WODMotion movement sensor to obtain those data. So the question I want to answer in this video is how fit are these CrossFit athletes really when you compare their power data to power data from, for example, cyclists or other endurance athletes, of which we have a lot of good data on power. And also, how does an elite CrossFit athlete compare to, for example, an average Joe like me? This video will be packed with state-of-the-art information, so sit back, relax, and let's jump straight into it. Hi everyone, I'm Gomar. I'm a senior scientist at ETH Zurich, based in Switzerland. And for the last decade or so, I studied and taught different aspects of exercise physiology, and now I want to bring some of that science back to you guys. So a couple of weeks ago, I got the amazing opportunity to be invited by Adidas HQ to fund as an external advisor to test some of their newly freshly signed elite CrossFit or functional fitness athletes. And we have a lot of content coming up related to this, which tests we do, which tests we design together with the Adidas innovation team. And we're currently editing these videos, so stay tuned for the videos in the next couple of weeks. But a part of that week, or a part of that whole, let's say, experience for the athletes was also to throw down at the end of the week on Friday, together with all the athletes and the whole staff, and also with the CrossFit gym, a local CrossFit gym, for 25.1, the first open workout. As you know, I've always been super intrigued by exercise physiology and the physiology behind sports. I'm coming from, let's say, a classical exercise science background, did my master's in exercise science, also did my PhD in movement science and molecular biology, looking at more conventional regular sports such as endurance sports as well as strength sports and how those affect specifically muscle growth. And then I also started doing, let's say, CrossFit, and always thought, oh man, that's so interesting. You kind of do both together concurrently, and you do have obviously effects of both strength as well as more endurance type of workouts. But the problem, or the interesting thing I think about CrossFit, is that the functional movements per se were always some kind of a black box. We don't know how much power an athlete is actually producing while doing burpees, pull-ups, deadlifts, butterfly pull-ups, and so on and so forth. And I think that is also why many of the programs out there are not optimal, or at least suboptimal, because they're too random. It's just very difficult to know the exact stimulus of a certain workout if you don't know how much power or how much energy per second the athlete is consuming. But that is all changing now. As you might have seen already from some of our Instagram posts, we have been closely collaborating with Mariah Sabioni from WODMotions, and she invented, together with her team, a new wearable that you just have to put on the chest like a heart rate monitor, and that can assess movement throughout time and automatically detect different movements in functional fitness. So just strapping this thing on, you can assess your pacing of a workout, how much you broke, how many reps you did per minute, or how many seconds you took for one rep. And also, intriguingly, and that's the key, using biomechanical models, we can now also assess, or at least closely estimate, the power production of certain functional movements, and then obviously add that into a workout to assess, let's say, the overall average power production per round, but also per total workout. And obviously, that's the opportunity we could not just lay aside, and we were able to actually assess some of the elite CrossFit athletes who did 25.1 in this event organized by Adidas. So let's look at some of the data, and let's see what we can also understand and learn from the best, right? So first of all, the most straightforward thing that you can pull out from WODMotions is, let's say, pacing. And here you see a graph of two different athletes. The top one is a shorter elite athlete. I'm talking about top 50 score in the world, so really good athlete. And you see for him the amount of seconds he took per rep. On the bottom, we see the same exact graph, but for a taller athlete, again, a very high elite athlete, also one of the best in the world, but he was substantially taller, 15 centimeter, 14 centimeter taller. Maybe just quickly remind you about the workout. It was an increasing reps of burpees, hang clean and jerk with one dumbbell, and then also a couple of meters of forward lunges. So always the reps of the burpees as well as the hang clean and jerks increased throughout the time. And you see here that the first 4 rounds, those athletes were able to keep up almost perfectly, right? So having around 2 to 2.1 seconds per rep. And that's all reps. That's burpees, hang clean jerks, as well as the lunges. And then the taller athlete at the bottom of your screen starts to decrease in speed. So he starts to slow down, 2.7, 2.8, 2.9 seconds per rep in the longer rounds, right? With the rounds with more reps, while the other athlete was still holding on to 2.4, 2.5 seconds per rep. That's an incredible pace, right? And that's also why I think in total, the shorter athletes at approximately 30 reps more than the smaller athlete. So defined by CrossFit, obviously the smaller athlete would have more work capacity per time domain, and he also wins the workout. Cool, but let's look at the power production. So how much energy they're actually expending mechanically within a certain time frame. And then it gets very interesting, right? Because here you see, again, top is going to be the shorter athlete, bottom is going to be the taller athlete. And the taller athlete, the first couple of rounds, while doing the same amount of seconds per rep, what you just saw, is actually producing much more power, right? 630 watts for the first round compared to 570 watts for the first round. And then they slow down slightly, 580, 512, and so on and so forth, right? So again, the first 4, let's say, rounds, the first couple of minutes, they were really going head to head. And to do that, the taller athlete had to produce significantly more power. And we're talking about a lot of power, right? If you look at the pacing, that's usually how it goes in such a workout. You start out hot, pretty hard, 600 watts, 650 watts, and then the pace, or the watts, not the pace, the watts go down throughout the following minutes up until minute 12, 13, and then you have a kick, an all-out sprint at the end, and you see that certainly on top, the guy, the shorter athlete at still 640 watts here for his last round, which was like 1.5 minutes, and that's also why he could take over other athletes and actually win the workout in general, while the push for the taller athlete was only 550 watts, so obviously he was moving much slower there. Really interesting data that I think has never been shown together with the reps as well as the power. So how does it look, let's say, as a summary? You see here, again, the green rectangle is a shorter athlete, the red rectangle is a taller athlete. And you see here that they moved all the time. So it was a 15-minute AMRAP, and they basically took 0 breaks. Certainly the top athlete, the shorter athlete took like 0.27% of the whole time it took a break, which was just almost not really visible. But then there was also interesting, the taller athlete somewhere in his last round actually took a break in between, I think, the burpees or the hang clean jerks. This I don't remember exactly anymore. And you see this obviously very nicely in the data because we can perfectly track this with this WODMotions sensor. And then when you look at the heart rate, it's going to be high. That's not very useful for this analysis, but the power is going to be pretty identical, right? Like he only has 17 watts in total more, the smaller athlete, but has 10% more reps, right? So just because of the fact that he has a lower range of motion, he can actually complete many more reps in the same time frame. Very interesting and really never been shown. So the question I always have, also having with my exercise science background, is, okay, we have now some good estimation of power production during a typical CrossFit workout. How does this compare to a sport where we have a lot of data from, right? An endurance sport, such as cycling, those top cyclists, like the pro cyclists, they are having this power meter constantly on their bike. So what are they pushing during a 10-15 minute all-out effort? And then I had to look into a little bit of data, a little bit of literature. And this was a really cool paper where they tried to model the actual power curve, so meaning power production at 0 or 1 second, 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and 20 minutes. And they modeled this from real data. That's important. So they had 9 professional cyclists during the Giro d'Italia, so obviously a very high-quality race. And they just pulled all the data from all the stages from these 9 cyclists and modeled what they could produce in those different time frames. And then I wanted to know, okay, how much more or less is this actually compared to our little cohort of CrossFit athletes? Obviously much heavier, but that can be accounted for. So here you see a little table. The top is the cyclist, or the average of the 9 cyclists. So they weigh on average 64 kilogram. This is in kilogram. And they could produce, according to those modeling, 370 watts for approximately 10 minutes. Okay, so this is actually pulled from real data. This would equate to 5.8 or 78 watts per kilogram. Good. The CrossFit athlete, A is going to be the shorter one, was producing way more watts, but obviously he weighs also much more. He has much more muscle mass, specifically muscle mass, and this would equate to 5.84 watts per kilogram. So almost exactly the same as what is shown in literature. And the CrossFit athlete B, who was our taller case study, produced less watts and also weighed much more, 97 kilograms. So this would equate to 4.94 watts per kilogram, which was approximately 14 to 15% lower. So this means that, according to this, that there's not that much difference in a short workout between the pure endurance cyclists or the pure endurance athletes, as well as the CrossFit athletes. I'm looking at pure power production, not aerobic power production or anaerobic power production, how much energy they can produce in a given time frame. And that's important. Obviously, this is not entirely correct, I think, because now we do have some data, more empirical data from top cyclists in the world. For example, Vingegaard, Pogacar, they have been shown to push 6.7 to 6.8 even watts per kilogram in, for example, a 13 to 14 minute uphill ride. So that is still 20-25% higher than what we have seen here. Obviously, it would be cool to measure the top score in the Open of 25.1. Maybe this would also come closer. For example, Colton Mertens, I think, had one of those top scores to see how much watt per kilogram he's actually pushing. And I think it will be very close to what we see here in cycling. Just for your comparison to see how fit those CrossFit athletes really are. Then we can do a very similar exercise for the women. And I was able to pull a very similar power curve for cyclists from the literature. And here you can see the same. So a cyclist weighing on average for this cohort in the study, weighing 59 kilogram, which makes complete sense, could push for 10 minutes 248 watts, which would equate to 4.2 watt per kilogram. And the CrossFit athlete, I didn't talk about this yet. We also measured one of the elite in the world CrossFit athletes with the WODMotions sensor, had 356 watts, right? So which would actually equate to even watt per kilogram, a higher overall number. Again, we have to take this with a little bit of a grain of salt because there have been empirically other data floating around. For example, here, this is some data from Kirsten Faulkner, who won the Olympic gold women's road cycling, and she has a 10-minute power of 338 watts, weighing quite significantly less than our CrossFit athletes, which again would equate to a higher watt per kilogram for 10 to 15 minutes, but not that significant, right? Importantly, this is just pure raw watts. This is not equating to how good their aerobic capacity is, for example. So if you're interested in this analysis, we are going to do much more of this in our upcoming seminar weekend in Berlin. CrossFit Grenzganger is hosting us, and I will do a 2-day seminar where we'll talk about data-driven performance in functional fitness. We will have several theoretical lectures on different types of training, polarized training, interference effect, and so on, and also apply some of these principles that I am discussing here in real time using lactate measurements, using workouts that you can do yourself. If you're interested in this, there's much more information on the whole content and the whole overview of the weekend in the first link in the description, or also just scan the QR code. It is next month. I have still a couple spots open, so you have to be quite fast, but I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Cool, let's go back to our CrossFit athlete. I want to show you a little bit of a case study of one athlete where I want to show all the data because it's so intriguing that I think you can learn a lot from this. So this is our shorter athlete, right? The overall, let's say the overall report, what we can get out of this using the WODMotions sensor. This I already showed you, so the average power, how much moving time. And here you see the different movements. So obviously the burpees, the hang clean jerks, and the lunges always increasing, obviously, in time because the rounds always got longer and longer, overlaid with the heart rate. Cool. So this again shows that heart rate per se is not that very interesting. I mean, it's just going to go up, keep at a very high level, and what can you do with this, right? But obviously, this is more interesting. Here you see the round splits. Obviously, the first round is going to be very short. It takes 7 seconds, 8 seconds, and 11 seconds. And then obviously, everything goes up, goes up, goes up. This is now for one workout, but you can imagine if you do a 5 round for time workout, this is highly interesting, right? Like, how long is your first round taking compared to your last round? How much break did you take, and so on and so forth. There's no break in this guy. I mean, this is, I think, a little bit of a break, but for the rest, there's no break. It just continuously moves towards the burpees and the hang clean and jerks and so on, as you would expect from an elite athlete in this workout. Then you can also look at the workout breakdown, the heart rate overlay with the minimum and the maximum per round, compared to, as I already showed, the amount of seconds he takes per rep. Really cool that you can see here. It starts out really well and really fast, but because the round is getting longer and longer, the reps is just more strung together. You see at the end, he's looking at 2.5, 2.4 seconds per rep. So that is obviously extremely fast, and I will show you that it's also much faster than an average athlete, for example, like me. And here you can see also the average power that goes up in the first round and then kind of trends down throughout the whole workout to then have a massive sprint at the end where he could sustain 640 watts for more than a minute, which is obviously extremely impressive. What is cool, I think, also what you can get out of this is, let's say, the movement breakdown. So how long did it take in seconds per rep for example, his burpee over the dumbbell, so his burpees, right? And you see here that it takes, in the beginning, 2.5 seconds, goes up a little bit, but he almost keeps his pace perfectly. And that's very impressive, obviously, because the reps, like the whole series of reps, becomes much longer. Here's in the round of 21, 24, 27. And here, even when he's doing 30 burpees, like full out at the end of the workout, he's actually able to increase his pace. And I saw it myself. He was actually sprinting this, and he was able to take over a lot of people. And then you can also, let's say, relate this to power. And that is super cool, right? Like just doing a body weight exercise, okay, which is a burpee, just body weight standing up and then jumping, you can produce 650 watts throughout that movement. And this is, again, only the burpee over the dumbbell. I think that is super interesting to see how much watts you can actually produce by just doing burpees. That's also why people don't like burpees, because they're actually really hard and a very intense movement, even when you do them slow. I will get to that later. And then you can go to the same for the clean to overhead, or the dumbbell to overhead. You see that the movement time is a slightly slower. I mean, that's just because of the nature of the workout. And then you see that also the power production here is going to be lower, because it's mostly, I mean, not fully, but it's mostly an upper body movement. I mean, obviously you do some hinging, but it's not that the dumbbell all the way goes down. If the dumbbell would have gone all the way down, for example, always putting it down and then go up for, let's say, a ground to overhead movement, then I think the watts would have been much higher. But interesting that the burpees on average had much more watts during that whole workout compared to the relative watts of the clean and jerk or the dumbbell shoulder to overhead. Okay, that's cool. So now we know a little bit what elite athletes are capable of, but how does this compare to average Joes, and how do average Joes actually do such a workout? So I was able to also wear a sensor during this workout compared to one of our colleagues that also did this workout. And he is a much shorter person. He's 1.69 m and I'm 1.80 m. I also have pretty long arms, so this certainly was not a great workout for me. But if you just look already at the different differences in moving time compared to, for example, the elite athletes, we were resting around 5%, 4.2%. So this again means it's a very cyclical workout, lightweight, that even average athletes like me could just keep on going, keep on moving. And that's also probably why it was chosen, because it's a very inclusive workout that everyone basically can do. Interestingly, if you look at the total amount of watts, right, the watts that we can produce is the euro per second is going to be, for the shorter athlete, he had 285 watts and I had 300 watts, 301 watts. That's super interesting, because the guy actually beat me tremendously in this workout. He did 12.8% more reps than me, but he actually produced 5 to 6% less power. Okay, so that's always interesting. Like, okay, what is then fitness? I mean, it's a whole different video that we don't have to go into now, but is the smaller athlete in this specific workout, would you consider him fitter than me or not? He does more reps, that's for sure, but he produces less power. When you, for example, would have had weighted lunges also increasing reps, I have pretty high confidence that I would have beaten this person. So it's highly dependent on the workout and how the programmer thinks about the workout, what will be the end result on the leaderboard. Just to show you, I don't have to go into this discussion now, but I think it's a very nice clean example of this. And then I also wanted to compare me, average Joe, to an elite athlete. Just look at the pacing, right? So we're looking at 2.5, 2.7, as I already discussed, reps per second on average for the elite. And I was just so much slower every rep. It's incredible. I was looking at 4 seconds, 4.2 seconds, and even the last round when I was, or the next to last round when I was really trying to push it, I was moving like a snail, 5.1 seconds per rep burpees, as well as the lunges and the shoulder to overhead, right? And obviously that's why the elite athlete has much more reps than me, and he has a much higher capacity. He can not only produce more power, he's also smaller, and obviously can cycle through the workout, cycle through the reps much faster. I thought it was quite striking to see. If you would compare me with even the taller athlete, he's also moving much faster. He's looking at 3 to 3.2 seconds per rep, and as you can see here, I'm just from the get-go looking at 4 to 5 reps per second. So what can we all, let's say, take home from all this information? Because obviously I did say a lot in this video. I think this is the first time we are able to assess actual power production verified by mechanical models, as well as a high quality movement sensor in CrossFit elite CrossFit athlete, not just average Joes, but elite CrossFit athletes. And we can see that those elite CrossFit athletes can produce, for the males, 450 to 500 watts during such a cyclical 15-minute AMRAP. And for the women, we're looking at 320 to 360 watts. All right, so that's very high, much higher than what I would have expected. I will get to this in later videos, but we also assessed their threshold. And when you compare the power production during such an open workout to their actual threshold, their maximal lactate steady state, they are pushing way more power, right? This infers that CrossFit athletes, as you would expect, but still interesting to see in data, have an enormously well-developed anaerobic system. Their VO2 max, their maximal oxygen uptake, might not be that dramatically high. We still don't really know how it is in functional movements, using functional movements, but still it might not be extremely high. Their anaerobic capacity and the ability to buffer the byproducts of anaerobic metabolism must be extremely well, because they can push, or they can produce so much watts via anaerobic energy sources. Very cool to see. And then also, I think a big take home, and maybe something to be discussed maybe in a podcast or in a different video, is that this workout particularly was definitely not favoring the taller athletes. And that is something that Dave Castro has or can think about if he watches this video when he designs 26.1. That was it from my part. If you like this kind of content, please do me a favor and quickly like and also subscribe to the channel. If you're not subscribed yet, it takes 5 minutes of your time and really helps out the channel, helps out to get this information out there. Thank you everyone for watching, and see you in the next one.